Hey guys, today we're going to be learning more about how the government influences the economy. And as we know, with global interdependence, countries, because they're dependent on each other, with what happens with the economy of one country, it affects economies in other countries too. So when our government tries to affect our economy, it actually affects the worldwide economy. And one of the ways that the government can affect the economy is through a tool it has called taxation. We all know about that that the government taxes income. There's sales taxes. There's for businesses, there's payroll taxes, and their income is also taxed. So the government has a lot of different ways that it can tax individuals and businesses. And the main purpose of taxation is so that the government has money to spend on public goods and services. We need money for schools, right? So to get that money, they can tax people. But there are other reasons that the government might decide to put taxes in place. And they might want to tax things in order to affect the circular flow. We have already talked about lots of ways that the Federal Reserve affects circular flow, and today we're going to talk also about how taxation can affect circular flow and the overall economy. So here we go with the notes. On the notes, it says the government taxes, borrows, and you have a teeny tiny blank to write spends. Sorry about that. The copy didn't come out too well. But the government taxes, borrows, and spends to influence economic activity. So write in taxes, borrows, and spends to influence economic activity. So government tax, that's the first thing. Government tax. When the government increases tax, the government tax increases reduce the funds available for private and business spending. So the best way to understand this is if you think about everybody having just one pot of money that doesn't change. We know in reality sometimes people will get a raise in their job and they'll start making more money, or maybe they're spending money on other things. But in terms of an economic model, let's think of it that everybody just has one little pot of money to spend. And when the government increases taxes, that means that I, as an individual, have to give the government more of my pot of money. And so that reduces the amount of money I have to spend on products I might want to buy, or in order to increase spending on my business. Maybe I wanted to hire a new employee and now I can't because I have to give that money to the government. Or maybe I wanted to buy a new oven for my cupcake business and have that capital resource, but now I can't because I have to give the money to the government. And so tax decreases increase funds for private and business spending. So if the government decides to decrease taxes, now I have more money to spend. I can go ahead and buy that new oven for my cupcake business. Or maybe I can go ahead and get a vacation to Disneyland, and then now I'm spending money in Disneyland. So when the government decides to increase or decrease taxes, they're also thinking about how that influences private spending and business spending, because it has a direct impact there. The government also can decide how much money to borrow. So government borrowing is a way that the government impacts the economy. And increased government borrowing reduces funds available for borrowing by individuals and businesses. So let's say we go to the bank, the World Bank, and the United States says, let's say there's only $1,000 in there. That would be a big problem. But let's say there's $1,000, and the U.S. says we need to borrow $900 of that. That means there's only $100 left for individuals and businesses to borrow. So now I can't maybe open a new location of my business because I can't get a loan from the bank. The bank has already let the government borrow that. It also, when government borrows more money, a lot of the way that it borrows money is through bonds and securities that it buys from individuals. So if I give my money to the government through a bond, I also have less money to spend on myself and on my business. So increased government borrowing reduces funds available for borrowing by individuals and businesses. So the opposite is also true. Decreased government borrowing increases funds available for borrowing by individuals and businesses. So if the government is borrowing less from that bank, that $1,000, now let's say the government only needs to borrow $200. Now there's $800 that private people can borrow, maybe to buy a home or buy a car or go to college. And if the government is borrowing less, there's also more for businesses to borrow. So now a business can open a new location. They can hire more employees. They can buy more capital resources. So decreased government borrowing increases funds available for borrowing by individuals and businesses. And government spending also has an impact on the economy. When the government decides to spend money, it has an impact. Increased government spending increases demand, which may increase employment and production. So when the government spends money, remember they're mostly buying public goods and services. So let's say the government decides to spend money on making a road. They put that bill across. Well, that actually creates jobs, because now that increased government spending on the road, I now have to hire workers to actually create that road. And now there's an increased demand for the cement. There's an increased demand for trucks. There's an increased demand for hard hats and all the things that the workers have to wear. So by increasing government spending, it increases demand, which also may increase employment and production. So by making that road, not only does it increase employment by hiring the people to make the road, but also now the people who make the cement maybe have to hire more people to make the cement. Maybe the people who make construction vehicles, there's an increased demand on construction vehicles, so now they have to hire more people to make more production vehicles. Sorry, that's the bell while I'm making this video. Don't get up. It's not the end of class right now. Pause. And we're back. Okay, so let's see here. So the next part of that is just the opposite. The decreased spending by the government reduces demand, which may result in the slowing of the economy. So if the government decides not to spend any money, let's say they were thinking about building a new school, but now they say we don't have the money, and in fact we're going to close down a school because we're going to decrease our spending on education, so we need to close down a school. Well, by doing that, we'll slow down the economy, because there now will be teachers that don't have jobs, and office staff and custodians and cafeteria workers and all the people that had been working in that school now won't have jobs. Also, there won't be a demand for toner for the copier, for paper, for all the other things that they need to run a school. Maybe they won't need to buy as many desks for students. That also will affect the company that makes desks for students. Now they may have to lay off people, and now they're not getting the natural resources that they need, and they're not buying more capital resources. So decreased spending by the government reduces demand, which may result in a slowing of the economy. Government spending and taxes. So increased government spending may result in higher taxes. In order for the government to spend money, they have to have money to spend. And the main way that the government gets money is through taxing individuals and taxing businesses. So when they decide that they need to increase spending, they actually are getting taxes from us. And the opposite is also true. Decreased government spending may result in lower taxes. Again, decreased government spending may result in lower taxes. If the government isn't spending any money, then they don't need as much money from individuals and businesses, so they're not going to tax us, and they're not going to tax the companies that people work for. The 16th Amendment. We need to do a review of all the other amendments we've learned too. But the 16th is another one that we need to remember this year. And the 16th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America authorizes Congress to tax incomes. So let's write that down. The 16th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States authorizes Congress to tax incomes, both both personal and business. So because of the 16th Amendment, I pay income taxes in April, and businesses usually file taxes quarterly. That means 4 times a year. And the 16th Amendment allows the government to get income to spend on public goods and services by taxing us. So what's important to understand about this? The government taxes, borrows, and spends to influence economic activity. So it's not just the Federal Reserve that can speed up and slow down the economy. There's other ways that the government can influence that. And what we learned today is that taxing and borrowing and spending money by the government also influence economic activity. How does the government influence economic activity? So what I want you to do here is I want you to draw it out. Go ahead and draw a little diagram or something that shows exactly how it influences that activity. And we're going to answer these 4 multiple choice questions. What is one likely way that the government can support additional spending on public programs? Why does the government get involved in taxing, spending, and borrowing? Which of these is true when the United States government borrows money? And which of the following amendments authorizes the Constitution to tax citizens' incomes? Ready, set, go. Do your assignment.